And the final item of business this evening is a members' business debate on motion 16920 in the name of Kenneth Gibson on Marine Conservation Society publishes 2024 State of Our Beaches report. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I'd invite members wishing to participate to press the request to speak buttons, and I invite Kenneth Gibson to open the debate around 7 minutes. Mr Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm grateful to those members who signed my motion allowing this debate to take place. And I'm also grateful to Daniel Hale of the Marine Conservation Society for his very helpful briefings. Scotland boasts one of Europe's most expansive and ecologically rich marine environments, fringed by over 18,000 kilometres of coastline. These waters support a wealth of biodiversity, from seals and whales to seabirds, and sustain critical sectors such as fisheries, aquaculture and offshore renewable energy. The Marine Conservation Society's State of Our Beaches 2024 report offers a detailed and sobering assessment of Scotland's coastal and marine environments. Compiled from the Society's Beach Watch programme, a year-round citizen science initiative launched in 1994, this report draws on one of the UK's most comprehensive marine litter data sets. Over a third of this year's 1,262 surveys took place in Scotland, with 467 surveys representing a 28% increase on the previous year. The significance of this evening's members' debate is underscored by two timely events: the 99th birthday of Sir David Attenborough last week and the release of his latest documentary, Ocean, a powerful tribute to both the beauty and fragility of our seas. As always, Attenborough's voice brings moral authority and urgency, calling on us to reconsider our relationship with the natural world, particularly its most expansive and endangered domain. The State of Our Beaches report paints a picture of paradoxes. While the Scottish Government is making progress, persistent challenges, particularly plastic pollution, continue to erode the resilience of marine ecosystems. Encouragingly, public engagement is gaining momentum. In 2024, more than 4,100 volunteers took part in formal beach clean-ups across Scotland, removing a total of 527,460 individual pieces of litter. There were many more informal, including those I organised myself. Yet the scale of the issue remains sobering. An average of 204 littered items were recorded per 100 metres of coastline, significantly higher than the UK national average. Litter linked to public behaviour was the most common type found in Scottish mainland beaches, accounting for 40% of all recorded waste. Certain regions saw especially sharp increases in litter density. Fife recorded an increase of 124.9%, while Dumfries and Galloway experienced a shocking 287% rise, as I'm sure Mr Carson will want to comment on in his contribution. Sewage pollution presents another urgent threat. In some areas, the situation is particularly severe. While the national average for sewage-related debris is 1.5 items per 100 metres, Falkirk and Inverclyde reported figures of 212 and 237 respectively. Wet wipes have emerged as a particularly troubling pollutant. More than 22,000 were collected from fewer than half of the beaches surveyed in Scotland. Often made from synthetic fibres, wet wipes degrade very slowly, posing serious risks to marine ecosystems. They can clog waterways, contribute to microplastic pollution and threaten marine life. Scottish Water has expanded monitoring of combined sewer overflows from just 7% in 2020 to 32% last year, a welcome step forward. However, the majority of discharges still go unmonitored. To address these environmental pressures, the Scottish Parliament passed the Circular Economy Act in 2024, a critical move away from single-use culture. The Act empowers ministers to impose charges on select disposable items, including wet wipes and takeaway cups. This legislative progress builds on the success of Scotland's carrier bag charge, introduced a decade ago. And within its first year, the modest charge led to an 87% reduction in plastic bags found on beaches. Further measures are on the horizon. Scotland's deposit return scheme, scheduled to launch in October 2027, as part of a UK-wide initiative, will add a 20 pence deposit to most single-use plastic bottles and cans. Consumers can reclaim the deposit by returning empty containers to participating retailers. Meanwhile, the Scottish Government has implemented wide-reaching protections for marine environments, with over 37% of Scotland's territorial waters now designated as marine protected areas. These include the Sea of the Hebrides, the world's first protected zone for basking sharks and minke whales, as well as the South Arn MPA and numerous protected sea lochs. Over 2,000 square kilometres of inshore waters are now permanently safeguarded from destructive practice such as bottom trawling and mechanical dredging, in line with the Marine Scotland Act 2010. And my own constituency of Cunningham North, the UK's first no-take zone, was established in Lamlash Bay in 2008 and has been a resounding success, one I believe should be repeated elsewhere in Scotland. Spearheaded by the Community of Arran Seabed Trust, this area has seen remarkable biodiversity recovery, including notable rebounds in scallop and lobster populations. In 2021, the initiative was recognised by the UN Convention on Biological Diversity as one of the world's top 20 outstanding practices. Building on this success, Coast partnered with the Arran Outdoor Education Centre in 2023 to launch a free marine science education programme. Delivered to over 375 students from across North Ayrshire, this programme integrates seabed cameras, remotely operated vehicles and plankton sampling with classroom learning, enhancing environmental literacy and supporting student well-being. Elsewhere, targeted conservation efforts have spurred the recovery of the critically endangered flapper skate and the legally designated MPA spanning Loch Soonart and the Sound of Jura. The success is bolstered by the use of AI-powered monitoring, which has helped to identify nearly 2,500 individual fish, illustrating the powerful synergy between legal protection and technological innovation. Overall, since 2022, the Scottish Marine Environmental Enhancement Fund has invested over £3.8 million in 54 projects, restoring seagrass meadows, salt marshes and native oyster populations. These projects not only improve biodiversity and coastal resilience, but contribute to blue carbon sequestration, a vital climate mitigation tool. Presiding Officer, as we reflect on the findings of the State of Our Beaches 2024 report, it's clear that Scotland stands at a critical juncture. Our nation's marine environment is one of the richest and most diverse in Europe and remains both an extraordinary asset and a fragile inheritance. While the report paints a sobering picture, one marked by rising plastic pollution, sewage-related debris and the enduring impacts of public littering, it also speaks to the power of progress. We're seeing tangible steps forward, with record volunteer engagement, new legislation, as the aforementioned Circular Economy Act, expanded marine protections and the steady integration of cutting-edge technology in conservation efforts. Yet we cannot be complacent. If we're to preserve the integrity of our marine ecosystems for future generations, our actions must now match the scale of the threat. That means continuing to strengthen legislation, accelerating the rollout of initiatives such as the Deposit Return Scheme and supporting a ban on single-use plastic wet wipes by next year. Presiding Officer, the challenges before us are significant but are not insurmountable. Although the journey is far from over, with further preservation and sustained effort, the environmental tide may finally turn. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Gibson. We move to the open debate. I call first Finlay Carson to be followed by Rhoda Grant. Around 4 minutes. Mr Carson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And firstly, can I congratulate my friend Kenneth Gibson for securing this important debate. It is refreshing to hear Mr Gibson talk fish when normally he talks about the economy. They often say that life's a beach. And I'm sure many of us have fond memories of digging our toes into the sand, building sandcastles destined to be washed away by the tide, or braving the icy waters to emerge with blue lips and goosebumps. These simple, joyful moments are only possible because Scotland is blessed with some of the finest beaches in the world. Many of those in Scotland's most beautiful constituency, my constituency of Galloway and West Dumfries, home to some of the most beautiful beaches imaginable, from the sand dunes of Sandy Hills, the rugged sheltered bays of Carrick, the soft white sands of Moss Yard, the dramatic cliffs of Dromore, or the pebbled coastline of Port Patrick. We have it all. Other beaches may be available, but if M&S or Carlsberg did beaches, they'd be the beaches of Galloway. As we've already heard from Kenneth Gibson, our ability to enjoy these natural treasures is thanks in no small part to the dedication of over 4,000 volunteers who took part in beach cleans across Scotland in 2024, a 25% increase on the previous year. In my constituency, groups like Honest in Dumfries and Galloway are making a real difference. Just recently, a dozen volunteers tackled marine litter at Port Logan and along the coastline near Stranraer. Their efforts are nothing short of inspirational. Another standout initiative is the Solway Coast and Marine Project, which aims to restore vital coastline and shallow sea habitats all along the 210 kilometres of the Dumfries and Galloway coastline, from Gretna to the Rins of Galloway. This project, led by Dumfries and Galloway Council Environment Team and the Solway Firth Partnership, is supported by Nature Scot, the Scottish Government and the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Their mission is to restore salt marshes, seagrass beds and coastal woodlands, and last but no means least, native oyster beds, of which I am the Parliament's nature champion. And I must be one of the few nature champions who can actually eat the species that they are to protect. And I do wish Solway Coast Marine Project all the success in the future. And I'm delighted that local authority councillors will also consider resuming mechanical beach cleans in Wigtonshire. But despite these efforts, the issues of marine litter remains to be one of the most pressing and frankly most disheartening environmental challenges of our time. Every year, millions of tonnes of plastics and other waste material enter our seas, harming marine ecosystems, endangering wildlife and even threatening human health. The Marine Conservation Society's 2024 State of Our Beaches report paints a stark picture. Over 10,000 kilograms of litter, comprising more than 527,000 individual items, were removed from Scotland beaches last year. That's a 7.2% increase on 2023 and well above the UK average. And for some additional context, I can also share the following data points specific to Dumfries and Galloway. The region saw a 287% year-on-year increase in the number of litter items per 100 metres of beach. It recorded 41 items of sewage-related debris per 100 metres, one of the highest rates of any local authority in Scotland. And it had 45 items of drink-related litter per 100 metres, the third highest in Scotland, highlighting the urgent need for effective deposit return schemes and package reform. But I know much of that litter comes straight from the A75, which winds its way along the Solway coast for much of its length. It's not a problem we can clear out or clear a way out of. While volunteer effort is vital, we must also adopt bold policy measures, such as embracing a circular economy and phasing out single-use plastic items like wet wipes, as we've already heard, cotton buds, cutlery and straws. Behavioural change is essential, but it must be supported by strong legislation and coordinated action. The Marine Conservation Society has rightly called on all UK governments, including the Scottish Government, to work closely with stakeholders to tackle this crisis head-on. In conclusion, Deputy Presiding Officer, this is not an insurmountable challenge, but it will require a serious shift in public attitudes, robust policy intervention and continued support for the volunteers and organisations who work tirelessly to protect our coastlines.
Thank you, Mr Carson. As a fellow species champion, I'm pretty sure the idea is not to encourage people to eat the species, but I may have got that wrong. Anyway, I now call Rhoda Grant to be followed by Ben McPherson around 4 minutes. Ms Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I want to congratulate Kenneth Gibson as well for securing this debate. And I would also like to pay tribute to the work of the Marine Conservancy Society, highlighting the impact of litter on our seas and beaches. I thank them for organising the beach cleans throughout the UK, and that's enabled over 15,000 volunteers to take part this year. And the beach cleans are not simply a tidy-up exercise, although, of course, they are part of that. The feedback that they get and the information they gather in their surveys, and they had 1,200 surveys last year, are really telling us what is littering our beaches and what they are finding there. And that information is really useful. It gives us an insight to the main cause of pollution, but it also gives us an insight into the most likely culprits. And this is valuable information in tackling the issue at source. This knowledge also shows trends of pollution and the impact of government policy. And, for example, something I find particularly striking was the number of carrier bags collected, which increased over the decades and then dramatically fell when a charge was placed on carrier bags. And we know it wasn't the cost of the carrier bag that led to the change of behaviour, but the constant reminder that we were not doing the right thing. If we took a carrier bag, before the charge was implemented, we all set off shopping with great intentions about taking reusable bags, but we often forgot, and this led to huge numbers of plastic bags blowing away and being discarded deliberately. And the charge actually changed behaviour, and that change was almost immediate, and it wasn't because of the cost, but it was about the constant reminder. So in a very short space of time, there was an 80% decrease in the discarded carrier bags found on beach cleans. And it just shows how many had been littering our seas up until that point, and indeed our public places as well. But sadly, that bucks the trend because plastic litter continues to increase. Because the public awareness and beach cleans add to this, the pressure to ban plastic and wet wipes continues to grow, and we see an increase of those wipes littering beaches. Their disposal in our sewage system adds to the pressure on the ancient infrastructure, causing further pollution. Presiding Officer, we've heard that Scotland's beaches regularly top the list of the best beaches in the world, and I was going to start quoting some of the beautiful beaches in the Highlands and Islands to give Finlay Carson a run for his money, but I just didn't think that was fair because there are many, many more in the Highlands and Islands. But it's desperately sad that they can be spoiled by litter, and this impacts on habitats, but it also impacts on our own enjoyment of the seaside. The information gathered from the surveys provided by the Marine Conservation Society must be used to initiate policies that cut litter and change behaviour, because it has to be down to each and every one of us individually to make that change and to make it socially unacceptable for people to litter. We see it all too often, not just in our beaches but in our roadsides as well. We must clean up our waters as well to ensure that sewage discharge is properly monitored, with a view of ensuring that there are no discharges of untreated sewage into our environment and into our seas. This is good for the environment and nature as well, because it would make our seas much more safer for ourselves. So it benefits us all to make a difference, and I would urge the Government to act on those suggestions.
Thank you, Ms Grant. I now call Ben McPherson to be followed by Mark Russell. Around 4 minutes, Mr McPherson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I pay tribute to my colleague for bringing this important issue to the Chamber, and also to the work of the Marine Conservation Society, who have had the pleasure of being engaged in on doing beach cleans in Wardie Bay, for example, in my constituency, and I know other members support their local beach cleans. And it's those volunteers, along with the Marine Conservation Society and others, who've really helped to bring attention to these issues in the political context, in the media, which builds on, of course, all of our collective awareness in our places that we call home of the issue of marine pollution. I, of course, represent the constituency of Edinburgh Northern Leith, which includes Granton Harbour, Newhaven Harbour, Port of Leith, and within that, the beach of Wardie Bay, as I mentioned. And the whole east coast of Scotland and of our capital city has contended with these issues for some time. We are seeing change and improvement. For example, there are oysters in the Firth of Forth now as well, which is excellent in terms of the increase of biodiversity and nature restoration. But we still face big challenges together, as the volunteers who clean these beaches discover every time they go down and do the good work that they do, picking up bags of litter. And I'll come to that more in a moment. The issue of sewage has also been touched on, and as chair of the Seafield Wastewater Treatment Works stakeholder group for the last 9 years, I'm very aware of the challenge of the pressure of a growing population and climate change and the effect that has, and the difficulties it can present. The wet wipes issue is the biggest one, and I think Scottish Water have done a good job of raising awareness with people not to flush wet wipes down the toilet or put them down the drain in any way. I think that is about a culture change, because I think people in the past didn't perhaps realise they were doing something wrong when that was happening. So we have moved positively, but there's more to do. I do think issues with sewage water overflows need to be discussed carefully. For example, my constituents have expressed concern when there have been genuine issues with sewage water overflows that have required attention of the authorities. However, some politicians have also created undue and inaccurate alarm chasing headlines about sewage, and that's not good for anyone. So just a word of caution in that sense. In terms of litter, when young people come into this Parliament, or when I go out to visit schools, I don't know if other colleagues experience this, but one of the questions I always get, nearly always, is, what are you going to do about litter? We really don't like litter. We're really appalled by litter. And yet something changes in our culture, doesn't it, later on in life, that some people think it's okay to throw litter, whether it's on the street, in a river, into the sea. And while I support measures like the plastic bag charge and bans on some products, which I'll talk about in a minute, how we change the culture around the acceptability of dropping litter, I still think is the perennial challenge in this space. Because it has to become totally unacceptable socially if we're going to make the progress that we need to. The Circular Economy Bill that came through the Net Zero Committee last year, I do think creates some important opportunities. But I do think we need to be careful about applying charges on products that are single-use and seeing that as a meaningful solution in this space. I think the plastic bag charge is not the same as a possibility of a plastic cup charge. I don't think we should treat them all the same in consideration. They're different products and in different circumstances that people would use reusables, for example. But I do think bans on certain products have been really meaningful, whether it's cotton buds, plastic straws, and there's the issue of nurdles, which we face in the First of Forth. One I would like the government to consider, if I conclude on this, single-use sponges are in themselves a single-use plastic, but they also create, through the process of cleaning, especially scourer parts, if they're plastic ones, microplastics that then go into the water system. And I've thought for some time, and there is some comment internationally about this, whether we need more action. We would need an affordable alternative that is not a microplastic and is a sustainable product. But this is something that people use every day, and I'm concerned about the amount of microplastics that are going into the water system. So it's not big bits of litter, but it does matter. So a great debate. Thank you for the time, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr McPherson. We now come to the final speaker in the open debate, Mark Ruskell, again, around 4 minutes.
Thanks very much, Deputy Presiding Officer, and can I thank Kenny Gibson for bringing this debate to the Chamber. I think we have this debate pretty much every year, and it's really good to be able to kind of reflect on the progress that's been made, and I think to celebrate the ongoing excellent work of MCS. And undoubtedly, you know, as we've heard from contributions from all members, Scotland's got some of the most beautiful beaches in Europe, and it would be remiss of me not to mention West Sands in St Andrews and Silver Sands in Aberdare in my own region. We've got thousands of miles of beaches and coasts, and of course they are home to nature, but they also keep us active and healthy. They bring pleasure to millions of people, while they also tell us the story of our communities and our wonderful places for learning and discovery for people of all ages. And of course, you know, our beaches and coasts are also on the front line of climate change, with threats from storms and sea level rises. But our shores also hold part of the solution as to how we can adapt to climate change. And I was really delighted to visit the Restoration Forth seagrass project recently. I know Ben McPherson's nodding because he'll recognise that project from this side of the Forth, and particularly its excellent work on oyster bed recovery. But I was particularly struck by that work around seagrass, because it is found, or it was found, in many sheltered areas of coasts. And it's a wonderful nursery for marine life, but it also captures 35 times more carbon than the rainforests do. And it just feels to me that, you know, restoring seagrass, working with communities, is a great way to address some of the impacts of climate change, but also to empower people. And we need to find those wins for nature and climate that really create that sweet spot for community action. So I think it's a really good example. And of course, there have been many more coastal projects that have been funded through the Nature Restoration Fund. They're creating a real focal point for community empowerment. And I think it'd be great to hear the Minister kind of reflect on the success of that fund and where it's going in the future. But I think what we've learned through the surveys, though, particularly in the last couple of years, is that our beaches are sadly becoming dirtier with a rising tide of marine litter. And I think, sadly, to turn back to seagrass, 92% of our seagrass across the UK has been destroyed in part because of litter. So the State of Beaches report this year shows an increase in the proportion of litter found on our beaches for the second year on a row. And I don't think we can ignore the fact that drinks bottles and cans still remain a major part of the beach litter problem. Changing behaviour and attitudes is one part of the solution, and a number of members have mentioned the success of the carrier bag charge, which was over a decade ago now. And as a result of that, there has been an 80% reduction in bags turning up as marine litter. So clearly, incentives for citizens, for consumers, do work. But I think it's also important that we don't forget that the polluter really should pay, and that producers of waste ultimately should take responsibility for it. Now, this Parliament, passed a deposit return scheme in the last session of Parliament for drinks containers, putting the responsibility back on to producers to run their own take-back scheme that would work for the public. And I remember at the time that this was going through the committee that, the many years of the MCS beach cleans was really a central part of the evidence to bring forward that DRS scheme that was originally brought forward by Rosanna Cunningham. But it was disappointing, I think, that in this session of Parliament that ostensibly lobbying from the glass industry undermined the scheme that had been developed in Scotland, and ultimately, at that time, it was then blocked by the UK government. And I think as we now, move past that period and we look to a new DRS scheme that will work UK-wide, arguably weaker, it is important to acknowledge that, in many ways, the worsening condition of our beaches is happening because vested interests have had some considerable success in slowing environmental regulation. So when members talk about nurdles and microplastics, there is a role for regulation here. There is a role for making the polluter pay, and also to drive industry towards innovation to find solutions. Voluntary action can only take us so far. Raising the floor of regulation across Europe for decades was the way that we delivered environmental progress, and it's why maintaining alignment with EU laws will be important for the health of our coasts, nature, bathing waters, and it's also why Environmental Standards Scotland has got such an important role in holding governments and regulators to account post-Brexit, so we can continue that progress. So I'm a little disappointed that we're not going to see the promised water and sewage bill from the Scottish Government in this session. Maybe the Minister will have more to say on that. Again, that could have kept up the pressure for improvement. But I do believe communities have got a role to play, from wild swimmers to dog walkers, in monitoring the state of our beaches and making that small but important contribution to cleaning things up. So I'd like to join members in thanking volunteers, celebrating this work, and I'm already looking forward to joining my next beach clean in Fife. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ruskell. I now call on Gillian Martin to respond to the debate. Cabinet Secretary, around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I've really enjoyed listening to this debate. If I'm not in my favourite place of the front benches of the chamber, I'm in my second favourite place. I'd like to be in a beach. I come from a coastal constituency. The beach is my happy place, and I know that I speak for many people in that regard. And I'm very pleased to be responding on behalf of the Scottish Government on this. And I thank Kenny Gibson for putting forward this motion, and indeed recognise that in his constituency have some of the most spectacular coastal areas in the whole of Scotland, and doing great work as well in the conservation. I particularly point out Lamlash Bay and the no-take zone as well, which I believe that David Attenborough has mentioned in the new film that he's put out. I'm yet to see it. I've got it on my list for the weekend. I also really want to join members in congratulating and thanking the Marine Conservation Society and their volunteers on their really commendable efforts over many years, not only removing litter from Scotland's beaches, but as Rhoda Grant pointed out, giving us vital intelligence as to what is actually washing up on our beaches as well, because that really has informed policy. If we know what the problem is and the scale of the problem, then we can be looking at how to address that problem as well, and that data really, really helps. And our marine litter strategy and our national litter and fly tipping strategy drive forward that work to reduce litter. But many members have mentioned about human behaviour as well as being, and in particular I'm struck by what Ben McPherson said in this regard, and Finlay Carson about the littering from cars. And I think that that's one of the things that we really have to sort of, like, as Ben McPherson said, make socially unacceptable. You know, in the same way that other things are socially unacceptable. If somebody is dropping litter, I would like some of the people that's with it to say, hey, don't drop that here, pick it up, put it in a bin. If you're in a car with someone who opens a window and puts out a drinks container, or as I see in my constituency, and I won't be alone in this, the burger carrier bags with all the empty cartons of what they have just ordered been thrown out wholesale. In my constituency in the AWPR, they put up signs about how many bags of litter have actually been collected each month, and it is absolutely appalling. So I think human behaviour is important, and obviously what we do in this chamber in terms of putting forward like regulations on things is only part of the solution. It is better to be in a situation where we are not having to put those measures in place and making things punitive. It is much better to be in a situation where we have reduced the amount of litter because it has become socially acceptable for people to be dropping it or throwing it out of their cars. And you know, many people have mentioned the work on some of the regulations around single-use plastics. We mentioned the cotton buds. You now no longer can't get plastic stemmed cotton buds. They introduced the carrier bag charge that Rhoda Grant mentioned as well. I am looking forward to the 90% reduction that Rhoda Grant talked about. I am looking forward to that happening with plastic bottles and cans on our beaches. It was supposed to be March, as Mark Ruskell's mentioned. It was supposed to be March last year. Would we be standing here saying, of course, with the implementation of DRS, we have seen this marked difference, and we have lost a year or more in that. But I'm pleased to be able to say that we're having a Four Nations approach in general to this. We will be removing, hopefully, many hundreds of thousands of plastic bottles and cans from our roadways and our beaches as well when that goes forward too. I want to mention a little bit about wet wipes in particular. Yes, I will.
Finlay Carson.
I'm just wondering what your view is. In Dumfries and Galloway, we're very lucky because our towns and villages are well looked after by the people who live there. And as you've stated in my contribution, the A75 and the litter in that obviously plays a big part in what ends up in our seas. What's your views on removing roadside bins? There's two ideas about it. You leave bins and you make your litter somebody else's responsibility, or you don't have bins and you're encouraged to take it home. What would your view be on litter bins being available on the side of roads?
I may have a view, but I'm not going to share it. I'll ask the Cabinet Secretary to do so.
I mean, I'd be very interested in, Presiding Officer, in your view on this as well, of course. I think that there's pros and cons. I mean, one of the issues with bins, and I can't give a fully rounded view in the time that I have, but one of the issues we have with litter bins is that what happens with the seagull population when you have the open bins, and that becomes an issue as well. But I'm also acutely aware of that, people are inconvenienced by not having a bin nearby. But I think really the bulk of the litter we're probably talking about is people not even stopping to even look for a bin. It is about the human behaviour and thinking it's acceptable to roll down your window and chuck out my bag. And I think your point was really well made. I wanted to talk about wet wipes briefly. I always want to try to take this opportunity to get on record that it's not just the plastic wet wipes that we're going to be banning that is an issue. It's all wet wipes. It take a long time for them to degrade, even the ones without plastic. So it's not acceptable. And I think this is the thing that Ben McPherson said, people don't know that they're doing wrong. And I think this fits into that section. Like any wet wipe, even the non-plastic ones, causes major problems in sewage systems because they take so long to break down and can also create a blockage. So I think people should be thinking about what they put down their loo in particular, and don't just assume that a wet wipe that says no plastic is acceptable to put down as well. I mean, sewage-related debris continues to be a challenge, and I think that the point was well made as well about having a sensible conversation about why we have sewage overflows, and indeed what's actually happening is actually protecting homes, and the actual quality of the water, the grey water that might have to go out in a sewage overflow, is actually really a small fraction of what would be in a water system, and is actually about preventing any kind of backups into people's homes. I mean, I'm really pleased with the work that Scottish Water is doing. I think it's testament to the fact that we've got a publicly owned water company, that all the profits that they make go back in to things like the programmes of the rolling out of the dynamic detection systems, overflow systems that they're putting out throughout the country as well. But a lot of it does depend on what human behaviour is like. I just want to end on one note. Volunteers have been mentioned throughout this. The volunteers, the people that go on all these litter picks, the people that organise these litter picks are worth their weight in gold. But you don't have to wait for an organised one to be able to play your part. Like I have taught my kids to do, take a plastic bag with you, when you take the dog down to the beach, and do your bit incrementally by picking up a bit of litter that you find as well. If we all do that, again, it will become socially unacceptable for people to litter, because not only are people going to their beaches and playing their part incrementally, they are actually showing that they care about the environment, and the more people that do that, other people see it, and that will be part of that behaviour change. I'm confident of that. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting of Parliament.